The rain had begun in the early hours, soft and persistent, drumming against the slate roof of Whitman Manor. Eleanor Whitman stood at the tall windows of the bedroom she had shared with Richard for 38 years, staring out at the garden he had planted decades ago. The roses were wilting, drenched in water, yet their red petals still seemed alive, stubbornly vibrant, like Richard himself had been until the last weeks of his life. When the call came, Eleanor felt a strange calm settle over her. Richard was gone. Her husband, the man who had been the center of her life and the driving force behind Whitman Industries, had passed away quietly in his sleep. She remembered holding his hand the night before, feeling the faint warmth ebb slowly, and now, nothing. The household moved in a flurry of activity that Eleanor barely noticed. Flowers were ordered, the chapel arranged, and lawyers quietly discussed the will. But Eleanor's mind was elsewhere. She had always known Richard to be secretive, meticulous in ways no one could guess. Somewhere in the depths of his office, in the drawers of polished mahogany furniture, he had left instructions, unseen, perhaps even unknown to Marcus, their son. Marcus. The name alone made her chest tighten. Her only child, groomed from infancy to inherit everything, had the confidence of someone convinced of their destiny. Tall, dark-haired, with sharp eyes that missed nothing and yet misunderstood everything. Marcus had always been sure he was the rightful heir. He believed the company, the legacy, the empire was his by birthright. The funeral was an elaborate affair, as befitted the Whitmans. Marble floors reflected the pale candlelight of the grand chapel. Friends, clients, and distant relatives murmured among themselves, their voices soft, tinged with sympathy. Eleanor, dressed in black from head to toe, moved with quiet dignity, acknowledging condolences with a nod or a faint smile, but her eyes were always on Marcus. He stood near the front, perfectly groomed, every gesture calculated. He raised his hand to speak, and the room hushed. "Mother," he began, his voice firm, confident, practiced. "The company needs a new vision. We cannot remain shackled to the old ways. It's time for innovation, modernization, leadership that can take Whitman Industries to the next level." Eleanor felt a small smile tug at the corner of her lips. She said nothing, letting him speak, letting him believe he was the master of the empire he had not yet earned. After the funeral, as the mourners trickled away and the mansion quieted, Eleanor found herself in Richard's study. The room smelled faintly of cedar and old books, the air tinged with nostalgia. She ran her fingers over the papers on the desk, the letters neatly stacked. And then her eyes fell upon a small folded document tucked beneath a stack of financial reports. Her heart quickened. The handwriting was unmistakable, Richard's meticulous script, precise and flowing. She opened the codicil, her eyes scanned the words, and she read the sentences again and again. The company, the entire Whitman Industries, was left solely to her, not to Marcus, not to anyone else. A quiet thrill ran through her, but it was tempered by patience. She did not rush. She would let Marcus believe he was in control, let him make his mistakes, let him reveal the cracks in his overconfidence. And then, when the time was right, the empire would return to its rightful leader. Within a week, Marcus had moved into the CEO's office, a space Eleanor had occupied alongside Richard for decades. The walls were lined with awards, certificates, and photographs of factory floors, of employees whose faces carried decades of loyalty. Marcus barely glanced at them. To him, they were relics, artifacts of an outdated era. He called a meeting with senior managers immediately. The atmosphere was tense. Employees who had dedicated decades of their lives to the company watched nervously as Marcus announced sweeping changes, layoffs, new policies, restructuring teams. Efficiency is key. We cannot afford sentimentality. Those who resist progress are holding us back. Long-serving managers exchanged worried glances. Eleanor watched silently from the doorway, her presence unnoticed. She listened to every word, every decision, every misstep. Marcus was bold, brash. Marcus Whitman sat behind the CEO's mahogany desk, leaning back in his chair with a smug sense of triumph. The office was sleek now, new furniture, a polished glass table, modern art on the walls, but it felt hollow, stripped of the history and heart Richard had built into the company. He didn't notice. All he could see were the numbers on the spreadsheet, the charts showing projected growth, and the imagined accolades waiting for him. Across town at the factory, a storm of quiet rebellion was brewing. Senior employees whispered in corners, frustrated with new policies that ignored decades of institutional knowledge. Machines that had run flawlessly for years were now mismanaged by inexperienced supervisors Marcus had installed. Orders for long-term clients were delayed, shipments missed. The loyal foreman, Henry, had quietly written a memo to Eleanor. "We're losing the heart of this company. He's going too fast." Eleanor read the memo with calm detachment. She didn't panic. She had predicted this. Marcus's arrogance would be his undoing. She smiled faintly as she penned her response. "Stay patient, observe, document. The time will come." Scenes at the factory. The factory floor, once bustling with confident energy, now had an air of confusion. Machines whirred unevenly, assembly lines halted, and employees moved uncertainly, unsure whose instructions to follow. Marcus had installed a new digital tracking system, expensive and shiny, but no one fully understood how it worked. "I've never seen it crash like this," muttered Lily, a supervisor of 20 years. "And I've been here since your father, Richard, started the first line." Henry shook his head. "He doesn't listen. He thinks theory trumps experience. If he keeps pushing like this, we're going to lose our clients." Meanwhile, Marcus strode through the floor, ignoring the murmurs. "We need innovation. Out with the old, in with the new. I won't let tradition hold us back." His voice was loud, but it rang hollow. The employees, instead of feeling inspired, felt unseen. Eleanor visited unannounced one afternoon, walking quietly through the factory. Her presence commanded respect. Workers, who had feared being fired by Marcus, relaxed. She spoke to them, not as CEO yet, but as someone who truly understood the business. "I've been here for decades, and I know what keeps this company alive. Take care of each other, and take care of the work. The rest will sort itself." Her words resonated. Quiet loyalty began to rebuild, not to Marcus, but to the company, to the vision Richard had left behind. The clients start complaining. Marcus's first board meeting with external clients was a disaster. He presented slick presentations, aggressive projections, and promises of rapid expansion, but clients noticed the cracks. "I'm concerned," one client said. "Your delivery times are inconsistent. Our last 3 orders were late, and we have contractual penalties pending." Marcus waved it off. "That's a minor hiccup. With my leadership, Whitman Industries is entering a new era. Trust me." Another client, a longtime partner, leaned forward, frustration clear. "Trust? You replaced our contact manager without warning. We're losing continuity. Are you sure you know what you're doing?" Marcus's jaw tightened, but he forced a smile. He couldn't admit he was in over his head. Inwardly, Eleanor watched from the sidelines during her meeting with another client. She noted every complaint, every expression of doubt. This chaos would serve her well. She would need every misstep documented when the time came to reclaim the company. Marcus's hubris escalates. At home, Marcus boasted to his friends about how he was revolutionizing the company. Expensive dinners, lavish parties, and social media posts painted the picture of success, but behind the image, the company was unraveling. Eleanor remained composed. She didn't argue, didn't interfere. She listened, observed, and planned. Every time Marcus ignored her, every time he dismissed loyal employees, he dug a deeper hole for himself. One evening, Marcus called Eleanor. "Mother, I'm considering firing the old management team entirely. Replace them with young talent. We're moving fast. We can't be slowed down." Eleanor's voice was calm, measured. "Marcus, think carefully. Experience isn't an obstacle, it's the foundation. Make one wrong move and it could cost the company dearly." He laughed. "Mother, you worry too much. The conference room at Whitman Industries was stark, modern, and intimidating. Floor-to-ceiling glass windows reflected the city skyline, the sunlight cutting across polished surfaces. Marcus sat at the head of the table, surrounded by his hand-picked advisors and a few hesitant board members who still remembered the company's glory under Richard. Eleanor entered quietly, dressed in a tailored black suit that radiated authority without ostentation. She carried a leather folder, heavy with documents, spreadsheets, memos, and copies of Richard's codicil. For a moment, the room fell silent as eyes turned toward her. Marcus's confident smile faltered slightly, though he tried to mask it. "Mother," he said smoothly, attempting casual dominance, "you're welcome to observe, but this is a meeting about my strategies: innovation, growth, modernization. You'll see the results soon enough." Eleanor didn't flinch. "I'm here to ensure the company remains stable," she said calmly, her voice steady, carrying an authority that made even Marcus pause. "And to ensure Richard's legacy is honored." The tension builds. Marcus began the presentation, his slides flashy, his voice confident, but Eleanor could see the cracks immediately. A graph showing projected revenue growth was paired with another showing declining client retention. Charts of employee turnover were conveniently ignored, but she had them printed in her folder. "Here," she said, standing, placing her documents on the table. "These are the facts. Orders delayed, clients lost, employees demoralized. You call this innovation, Marcus?" Gasps echoed around the room. The board members leaned forward, studying her documents, whispering to each other. Marcus's face flushed red. He attempted to regain control. "These are minor setbacks," he said, voice slightly trembling. "Every new strategy faces resistance. I've got this under control." Eleanor opened Richard's codicil, sliding it across the table. "Control? The codicil states clearly that I am the rightful CEO. Your decisions have proven reckless, and the company suffers because of your arrogance. Today, Marcus, I reclaim my position." Boardroom drama. The room erupted in whispers. Senior board members who had been loyal to Richard nodded subtly. A few younger advisors tried to speak in Marcus's favor, but Eleanor's calm, commanding presence silenced them. "Marcus," Eleanor continued, her tone sharp but composed, "I trusted you to learn. I hoped you would respect the company and its people. But leadership isn't just about ambition or charm. It's about responsibility. You have failed." Marcus's protests became louder, desperate. "Mother, you can't do this. I've been leading. I've implemented the vision. This is unfair." Eleanor's eyes, calm yet piercing, met his. "Unfair? I let you have every opportunity to prove yourself. The facts speak for themselves. The employees, the clients, the board, they know the truth. Leadership is earned, Marcus, not inherited by arrogance." The board began to vote. One by one, members stood to support Eleanor. The young advisors remained silent, powerless in the face of experience, evidence, and authority. Marcus's face turned crimson as the final vote was announced. Eleanor Whitman, CEO of Whitman Industries. Marcus's humiliation. Marcus slumped in his chair, disbelief etched on his face. He tried one last attempt to reclaim authority. "This isn't over. You'll regret." Eleanor interrupted. "Marcus, today you are stepping aside. You may remain in a minor advisory role if you wish, but the company belongs to me. You will respect that for the sake of everyone who has dedicated themselves to it." He opened his mouth to argue, then closed it. The weight of failure, the shock of public humiliation, and the undeniable evidence of his mistakes left him speechless. Employees who had been secretly observing the board meeting cheered quietly. Longtime managers exchanged relieved smiles. The company's heart, the people, recognized Eleanor as the true leader. Rebuilding the empire. With Marcus removed from his role, Eleanor set to work immediately. She reinstated trusted managers, reached out personally to clients to apologize for the disruptions, and held one-on-one meetings with employees to restore morale. "I've been here for decades," she said in a meeting with foremen and supervisors. "I understand the intricacies of this business. We will move forward, but with care, with respect, and with a dedication to the people who make Whitman Industries what it is." For the first time in weeks, the employees felt hope. Orders began flowing smoothly again, production stabilized, and clients began returning, reassured by Eleanor's presence and her calm authority. The following weeks at Whitman Industries were a mix of careful restoration and quiet triumph. Eleanor moved with purpose, yet with a calm grace that reminded everyone why Richard had trusted her so implicitly. The employees, once demoralized by Marcus's reckless decisions, now looked to her for guidance. On the factory floor, familiar faces returned. Lily, the supervisor who had resisted Marcus's changes, smiled as Eleanor approached. "It's good to see order again," she said. "The workers trust you. They've always trusted you." Eleanor nodded. "It's not about me. It's about the company and the people who keep it alive. Let's make sure we don't forget that." Clients reassured. Clients, once frustrated by delays and miscommunication, received personal calls from Eleanor. Each conversation was measured, warm, and firm. She reassured them, promised accountability, and restored confidence. Slowly, contracts were renewed, orders returned to schedule. The reputation of Whitman Industries, tarnished by Marcus's arrogance, began to shine once again. Marcus learns humility. Marcus spent weeks in reflection. Removed from power, relegated to an advisory position he had once scorned, he began to understand the lessons he had ignored. He walked through the factory, quietly observing the workflow, asking questions of employees, listening rather than directing. One afternoon, he approached Eleanor, humility evident in his posture. "Mother, I want to understand, not just the business, but how you lead it, how you earned the trust I threw away." Eleanor regarded him silently for a moment, then spoke. "Leadership is not a title, Marcus. It's earned through respect, responsibility, and care. You have the chance to learn it now. Watch, listen, and act with integrity." For the first time, Marcus truly listened, and in that quiet observation, he began to rebuild himself, not as a leader by entitlement, but as a leader by effort and understanding. The company flourished. Under Eleanor's guidance, Whitman Industries not only stabilized but flourished. She blended tradition with modern innovation, respecting Richard's legacy while cautiously embracing new ideas. Employees felt valued, clients returned, and investors regained confidence. Every decision Eleanor made reflected decades of experience, careful calculation, and genuine care. She understood the pulse of the company in a way Marcus never could. A personal victory. Late one evening, Eleanor walked the halls of the factory, empty now except for the soft hum of machines. She paused at a window, looking out at the city skyline. Richard had trusted her, and she had honored that trust, not with vengeance, but with patience, wisdom, and unwavering resolve. She reflected on the journey, the mourning, Marcus's arrogance, the company's near collapse, and the quiet strategy that allowed her to reclaim what was rightfully hers. It had not been easy, but it had been necessary. In that moment, Eleanor smiled, not out of triumph over her son, but because she knew the company, the employees, and the legacy her family had built were safe. Whitman Industries would endure, guided by wisdom, courage, and respect for those who truly mattered. Closing reflection. The hidden clause Richard had left behind was more than a legal document. It was a safeguard, a symbol of foresight, and a reminder that leadership is more than ambition. Eleanor had proven that patience, intelligence, and moral clarity could overcome arrogance and entitlement. Marcus, now humbled, continued to learn under Eleanor's guidance. Employees and clients alike saw the stability and wisdom that came from her leadership, and as she looked out over the city, Eleanor knew that the empire was not hers alone. It belonged to everyone who had built it, sustained it, and believed in it. Whitman Industries had survived chaos, betrayal, and hubris, and emerged stronger than ever.